Greetings to all my tech heads out there in the KevTechify nation, and if you're new here, welcome. In this episode, we're going to look at peer-to-peer networks. We'll be discussing client-server model, peer-to-peer networks, and then we'll talk about some of the common peer-to-peer applications. This episode is part of my series on Introduction to Networks for the CCNA. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. The client-server model. A lot of times you'll hear in IT, we're talking about a client-server architecture. And what happens here is the client is the device that is requesting data. The server is the device that is responding to that request with the requested data. The application layer here, these protocols describe the format of the requests and the responses between these client and server devices. In a peer-to-peer network, we have two devices that are connected via a network, and they can share resources such as printers and files without having a dedicated server here. Every end device, also known as a peer, they can both function as a server and a client. One computer might assume the role of a server, giving data to another peer, while at the same time simultaneously being a peer requesting data from a different server. There is no main server to control everything, and so these devices, they can be a client or a server, or they can be both at the same time, sending and receiving data in a peer-to-peer network. A peer-to-peer application allows both devices to act like a client or a server. As you can see in this graphic here, we have an instant messaging program. We have two devices, and depending upon if one device is sending the message to another, it's either a client or a server. And then of course that other device needs to respond back, and so that switches the role of client to server. And as you can see, it depends which way the data is flowing, if you're a client or you're a server here. And a lot of times these peer-to-peer systems, they use a hybrid system where they contact an index server that has a list of all the resources available and who has what resource, and then based upon that index, we can establish a peer-to-peer connection between the two devices, the one requesting the data and the one that has the data. With peer-to-peer applications, the device is both a client and a server most of the time. They share data across there. A lot of times people think of a peer-to-peer network as just strictly file sharing, but a lot of times, a lot of the programs we use in business, in day-to-day activities, they are a peer-to-peer client. Some of the most common peer-to-peer networks here are the BitTorrent networks. And yes, that's where illegal files get shared a lot, but we also see legal files getting shared that way too. There are several protocols that use the BitTorrent network to share files between computers or a backup system. A lot of companies or organizations that develop versions of Linux distribute their versions of Linux through the BitTorrent network. Direct Connect, eDonkey, Freenet. There's a number of these networks out there for peer-to-peer networks and applications. It was my pleasure to provide you with this wonderful episode on peer-to-peer networks. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps me bring you more great content. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel. All of my socials and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com. There you can find out how to get all these episodes in video and podcast form. In the upper right is my playlist for my series on Introduction to Networks for the CCNA. In the bottom right is one of my favorite videos that I linked just for you. Thank you so much for watching this episode of my series on Introduction to Networks for the CCNA. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.